Hello and thank you for joining us on the Capitol Report. I'm your host, Steve Lance. Here's a look at some of the stories we're covering for you today. The Build Back Better bill is on hold for the holidays, but the debate will carry on into the new year. We break down the social welfare programs in the massive bill and how this spending would change what you're paying in taxes. And with Biden's Build Back Better social and climate spending bill essentially one vote away from passing, we sat down with President and founder of CURE, Center for Urban Renewal and Education, Star Parker, to find out what the implications are for the urban community. As Omicron spreads rapidly, the latest data shows that COVID-19 is surging again across the United States, with key indicators of death and hospitalizations rapidly on the rise. Biden's Build Back Better bill is on hold for now, but Senator Lindsey Graham says he thinks that the bill is dead forever. He called this bill an effort to dramatically reshape America. But why? NTD's Melina Wisecup had a chance to ask Senator Graham what he thinks are some of the most concerning policies in this bill. Here's what he told us.
We believe these programs are going to do more harm than good, grow the government, march us towards socialism. If you have a child in a religious daycare setting, the child care component of this bill is not going to be available to these organizations because of the regulations.
The South Carolina senator this week asked the Congressional Budget Office to score the bill, anticipating that these new government programs would be extended for 10 years. Under these circumstances, the bill would cost $5 trillion in total instead of $1.8 trillion, and would also add $3 trillion to the national debt. Democrats in the White House have pushed back on this CBO score, calling it fake, since the programs in the current bill are proposed as temporary programs. But the deciding swing vote would be Senator Manchin, who says he's not convinced the programs will be temporary. With Manchin's skepticism, Graham says he predicts the bill is not only on hold, but dead forever. There's a slew of new programs in this bill, accompanied by dramatic changes to the tax codes. NTD's Melina Wisecup walks us through some of the most transformative programs and what they'll cost you and your grandchildren for generations to come.
The House passed the Build Back Better bill last month. Now it's stalled in the Senate. Here are some of the social welfare programs included in this bill. Universal pre-K and affordable child care, meaning the government would help parents pay for child care, and those making less than the median income would pay nothing for child care. For health care, Obamacare expansion, and eligible women would have Medicaid guaranteed for the first year of their child's life. And housing, it dedicates billions to build more low-cost housing, and it would help low-income Americans pay for their down payments and rent. It's the largest investment in housing ever in American history. And that's just the social side of the bill. There are also hundreds of billions being spent on climate projects, all totaling to around $2 trillion. But that's only if the programs are temporary.
They're budgeting for just a few years stretch, but we know that the ultimate goal here, and that what Congress usually does, is just continue to extend these into perpetuity. So there are enormous increases in spending, and really the tax hikes in this package are the biggest tax hikes we've seen since the 1960s.
So how would the tax code change? If you make more than $10 million, you'll pay 5% more on top of the 37% you already pay.
This would put the top marginal income tax rate for individuals at over 45%. And if you live in a high tax area like New York City, well, that means that about 60% of your income as an individual could be shuttled off to the federal government and make our business taxes higher than communist China.
And Melina, we've heard from economists and critics of this bill that it would do more harm than good for low-income families. Why is that?
Well, Steve, critics say that because of the ripple effects that these higher taxes could have. So particularly when you look at the business impacts, if it costs more to do business, businesses will pass those prices on to consumers. And not only that, they'll try to keep their wages down. So they'll hire less people or they'll lay off people currently working for them. So those are just some of the ways that this bill could impact lower to middle income Americans, along with inflation. If this bill does fuel inflation, that's also would hit the financial status of those lower to middle income Americans. Now I want to switch topics and speak about some immigration news in this bill. The Senate Rules Advisor just ruled out a Democrats' proposal to keep immigration reform in this bill. The House version that passed included work permits for illegal immigrants, as well as protecting them from being deported. And the Senate Rules Advisor says that this is a policy issue, not a budget issue. So now Democrats here in the Senate will have to strip that immigration provision from this Build Back Better bill. Steve?
Melina, we know that one part of the negotiation on this bill that's still not decided is the SALT tax. So, Melina, what is this SALT tax that everybody is talking about?
Well, Steve, the state and local tax deduction, what it really does is it allows individuals in higher tax states to deduct those state taxes from their gross income. That lowers the amount they pay in federal taxes. And Republicans generally, especially Republicans in lower tax states, kind of argue against this because they say it's unfair for Americans in lower tax states to be subsidizing higher tax states. But it doesn't just gain pushback from Republicans. There are some progressives who are against this because they say this would be just a giveaway to the wealthy, since it would allow wealthier individuals in higher tax states to have tax breaks on their federal taxes. Steve?
Melina Wisecup, thank you for that. Star Parker is the president of Center for Urban Renewal and Education. Star has spent decades reaching out to poor communities. The Center for Urban Renewal and Education aims to fight poverty and at the same time restore dignity. With President Biden's massive social spending bill on the table, we sat down with Star Parker to get her take on the massive spending bill. Star Parker, thank you so much for joining us on the Capitol Report.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Now, Star, I want to ask you about President Biden's Build Back Better plan. There's really so much packed into this bill, so much going on there. We'll get into a lot of the different aspects of it, but first, there's something for the gig workers, essentially photographers, caterers, et cetera. Tell us about how this could affect them.
I'm so glad that you asked me that, and thank you for having me on, because a lot of different components of this massive welfare bill are getting some attention. Some are getting more attention than other components, but what the union overreach is doing inside of this bill should be alarming to anyone that owns a small business, anyone that is an independent contractor, or anyone that's in gig, meaning that I kind of do my own thing and build my own little business off the side, and maybe a lot of different components. Because what BBB has in it is union overreach. No, if you're going to be involved with any types of aspects in the population's private sector, you're going to go through union. And this is problematic. It seems like it's just a good idea, but when you think about less than 6% of Americans have decided in the private sector that they want to participate in unions, and you think about how massive these union promises are over the years to people that are now retiring, they have an urgency to make sure that people are forced into union, and that's what this comes down to. But the disparate impact is on minorities and others who like the private industry in gig, in independent contracting, and in small business.
Now, you just mentioned that it sounds good on the surface. There's a lot of things, I think, one of them being universal pre-K, which sounds like a noble cause on the surface. What makes you concerned about the government funding this type of a program?
Because it's not a good idea to force people to be on a nanny state. If people want their children to be in pre-K, then that's an individual decision of that household. This is not a decision that government bureaucrats should make for every family in America. Half the families in America don't have children in their households, so to force them to even pay for pre-care, if you will, the universal part is what we should really be concerned about, because that just means indoctrination. That just means that we don't want you to select your babysitter anymore. We want to define the curriculum before they get to kindergarten. This is not something that free people should buy into.
Now, Star, there's another thing in this bill. It's the child tax credit, I guess, and there's certain verbiage that talks about it, but it's actually, from what I understand, more of a subsidy than a tax credit. And, you know, a lot of people are of the mindset that subsidizing or helping the poor is the compassionate thing to do. What do you say to this?
I say that we've had 60 years of trying to help the poor, and we've been left wanting. We've not helped, we've hurt. We've dismantled family life. We've created big, massive ghettos and government dependency. And when it comes to these types of subsidies, what we should start talking about, because only half American households are really in benefit if this were to pass in this particular part of it. What we should be talking about is the progressive tax system working effectively for all of us. You wouldn't need tax credits in all of these different areas to opt yourself out of paying taxes if we had maybe a different tax system. This is about losers and winners and government deciding who they're going to be. Flatten the tax, you might not have these problems.
So do you think there is a better way to invest in people rather than, maintaining the status quo? And what are some of the ways that you would suggest to use some of this money to uplift people rather than keep things the same?
You give it back to them. You remove governmental barriers. You allow for people to spend their own money on the things that they want. If you're talking about our anti-poverty programs, you give them vouchers. Just let them go live anywhere if they're on the HUD programs. Let them go eat anywhere if they're on the food programs. Let them go work anywhere without all of these strings attached. You give them their freedom back. That's what you do. You give them their dignity back so that they then can make choices for their lives so they can grow their lives and enjoy this wonderful country of ours.
Star Parker, thank you.
You're welcome.
And right before the holiday season, infections and hospitalizations of the coronavirus are rising again across the country. President Biden and Vice President Harris met with members of the White House COVID-19 response team on Thursday to discuss the latest developments related to the Omicron variant. The U.S. is facing double-digit cases surging as Omicron spreads quickly into at least 36 states throughout the country. Hospitalizations also continue to climb as staffing shortages persist. The U.S. Health and Human Services says that over 67,000 people are hospitalized with COVID-19, which is 40% higher than just a month ago. According to Johns Hopkins University, there are nearly 119,000 new cases every day, which is 40% higher than a month ago. The average number of deaths reported is around 1,300, a 12% increase compared to just a month ago. Yesterday, over 100 Marines were removed from duty for refusing to take the COVID-19 vaccine. 2 Army battalion commanders have also been booted over the mandate. This comes the same day the Army announced that it has discharged 6 high-ranking active duty soldiers, including 2 commanding officers. This Wednesday was the vaccine deadline for the Army, but nearly 4,000 U.S. soldiers have refused to take it. They could be pushed out of the service in the coming weeks. The Navy and Air Force have already taken similar actions. 27 airmen are the first service members to be removed for disobeying the vaccine mandate. The Senate is giving the green light to a new addition to the National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA. The measure would forbid the Defense Department from dishonorably discharging military members whose only offense would be refusing to get vaccinated. Kansas Senator Roger Marshall, who introduced the bill, said that he supports the vaccine, but also those who defend our freedoms. He says that a dishonorable discharge treats our heroes as felons and that American heroes deserve better. The amendment to the NDAA wouldn't protect troops who opt not to get the jab from being discharged altogether. Instead, it would permit them to be discharged honorably. Dishonorable discharges have historically been reserved for the most reprehensible offenses. The bill now moves to President Biden's desk, and it remains to be seen whether he will sign it into law. And coming up, a new wave of sanctions is coming down on Beijing. The U.S. government has put investment and export restrictions on dozens of Chinese companies, while the Senate passes a bill targeting the CCP's forced labor practices. And with the 2022 Beijing Olympic Games just around the corner and most major countries around the world conducting a diplomatic boycott, will this stop the Chinese regime from being the most egregious human rights violator on the planet? Congressman Pat Fallon weighs in. Former First Lady Melania Trump has launched a virtual platform to showcase blockchain art for purchase as NFTs, otherwise known as non-fungible tokens. Proceeds will include funding for foster children and their education in computer science. Brain control technology. The term sounds like a science fiction exclusive, but in the latest sanctions imposed on China by the United States, the U.S. says China is trying to weaponize it. The U.S. is blacklisting dozens of Chinese research institutes over human rights abuses and biotechnology development that undermine U.S. national security. The Commerce Department has added China's Academy of Military Medical Sciences and its 11 research institutes to the export blacklist. Officials say these institutes use biotechnology to support the Chinese military and repress ethnic and religious groups. The communist regime sponsors research on gene editing, human performance enhancement, and brain-machine interfaces. This move bars American companies from selling components to these entities without a license. The Treasury Department has also put investment restrictions on 8 Chinese tech firms, including the world's largest commercial drone maker, DJI. The Treasury blames them for supporting the biometric surveillance and tracking of Uyghurs in China's Xinjiang province. And those were only part of the sanctions handed down to Beijing on Thursday. The U.S. Senate passed a bill banning all imports from China's Xinjiang region, unless businesses can prove they were produced without forced labor. The Senate sent the bill to President Joe Biden. The White House states that the Biden administration will be working closely with Congress to implement this bill and hold China accountable for genocide. A version of the bill passed the House and Senate with overwhelming approval from both parties. But federal record shows Apple's lobbying firm opposed the bill. Apple, like Nike and other corporations with links to China, say they've found no sign of forced labor from the Xinjiang region. One of the most bipartisan issues on the Hill may very well be the issue of China and its ongoing human rights abuses. With the Beijing Olympics just around the corner and President Biden ordering a diplomatic boycott, we spoke to Texas Congressman Pat Fallon to get his take. Congressman Pat Fallon, thank you so much for joining us on the Capitol Report.
Steve, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Now, Congressman, President Biden has recently ordered a diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Olympics. Some people say that this is a good step. There's others that say that it's not enough. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's only taken 10 months, but there is something that Joe Biden did that I actually agree with. But it's not, let's be really honest about what it is. It's symbolism at its best, at best rather. You have, I don't want to punish the athletes. I don't think in 1980 when we boycotted the Moscow Olympics, it really did much, quite frankly. What the Soviets ended up being in Afghanistan for almost the greater part of a decade. Now,
I'm going to ask you about Taiwan in just a second here. But when it comes to the boycott, do you think that it might have a bigger impact if the athletes, because the games will go on, if they were to, make different gestures throughout the events, talking about the human rights abuses and forcing this into the global spotlight? Our fellow Bostonian or Massachusetts person, Enes Kanter, the Boston Celtic. He's been very outspoken. So, he could be leading the way in maybe sparking some ideas for some of the athletes while they're in Beijing.
Enes Kanter is a hero, and not only because I like the Boston Celtics, but because he has said, you know what, I'm going to do what's right, and I'm going to advocate, even if it has a cost to me personally, which it clearly does. And you see other athletes like LeBron James, he is a quote-unquote social warrior, but in the United States, but he is silent on China. So when it seems to cost him money, he doesn't want to, doesn't want to enter into the political foray. But when he actually can make money, like a Colin Kaepernick, he's actually made and monetized his activism. That really takes separates the wheat from the chaff, if you will.
Now, coming back to Taiwan, you sponsored a resolution condemning China's aggression toward Taiwan. They've recently flown warplanes, very close to the island. What do you make of this aggression? Are they planning an attack? Are they testing the United States, or what do you make of this?
Yeah, we filed HCON 56, and what it did, as I mentioned before, was it guaranteed Taiwanese security and sovereignty. So what China's intentions are, hard to say, but I do think they definitely probe constantly, and they react to strength and they react to weakness. And what we need Joe Biden to do, and any future American president, is to say, listen, we're all about engaging, we're all about really, again, more of a de facto détente, but if you use aggression, particularly to cross those 100 miles to attack Taiwan, then you're going to have a hot war with us.
Now, you co-sponsored legislation to prohibit certain CCP members from entering the United States in response to the stealing of United States intellectual property. Tell us a little bit about your bill, and if it passed, what impact it might have.
Well, The espionage that the Chinese have, they're very good at it. The Soviets were very good at it as well. And it's not only just with geopolitical and national security issues, it's also economics and our intellectual property, patent theft as well. That's one thing that President Trump, he was very good on China, as you know, and that was one of the things that he emphasized, was he wanted the patent theft to cease and desist as well. So we need to be putting teeth behind this stuff and not just words. Beijing's very smart about, oh, that's just words so they can cater to their electorate, but it doesn't do anything to us. I mean, when Joe Biden parroted exactly what Xi Jinping would have wanted him to say, which was a strong China is in the best interest of the United States, I was horrified, I almost vomited. I said, no, it's not. A free China is in the best interest of the United States and the rest of the world, but not a strong China ruled by a handful of men in Beijing. That's not in the best interest, quite frankly, of their country or the world at large.
Congressman Pat Fallon, thank you.
Oh, thanks so much, Steve. Appreciate it. God bless.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says members of Congress should not be banned from trading individual stocks. This comes after a Business Insider report claims that dozens of congressional members have violated laws against insider trading, mostly because they didn't report their trades on time. In light of the report, a reporter asked Pelosi Wednesday whether members of Congress should be barred from stock trades. The Speaker of the House didn't agree.
We're a free market economy. They should be able to participate in that.
And former First Lady Melania Trump has ventured into the realm of non-fungible tokens, otherwise known as NFTs, on a new platform powered by Parler. She released her first token with plans to continue in regular intervals through her new platform, melaniatrump.com. Part of the proceeds will go to funding education for foster children to improve their skills in computer science as well as programming and software development. NFTs are digital assets that use blockchain technology to record the ownership status of digital objects. The rising popularity in non-fungible tokens, or NFTs, prompted Collins Dictionary to pick NFT as its word of the year. Washington, D.C. is the 5th best city for young professionals in the country. This is according to an analysis by Rent.com. Ranking the top 50 cities throughout the country, the study looked at demographics, recreation, and rent-to-income ratio. D.C. scored high for nightlife and public transportation, which makes the city attractive and affordable. Nearby Alexandria, Virginia was ranked 15th, while New York City did not even make the list. With Christmas quickly approaching, U.S. Marines are collecting last-minute toys for tots at Washington, D.C.'s Union Station. Union Station is not as busy as it was before the pandemic, but 1 week before Christmas, travel is starting to pick up, and the U.S. Marines are inviting people to join their last efforts before Christmas arrives for the Toys for Tots campaign.
We're just trying to motivate just try to bring in joy to all the kids around D.C. area. So, I mean, it's a joy to always see a toy at Christmas. Right now we're at 28,000 kids we're distributing toys to.
During the holidays, there's a lot of hustle and bustle, but some still stop by, hoping their donations will make a difference.
I just donated money to the community, to the kids, so I gave them $10, guys, $10. And it's a pandemic, so you know I did something right.
I know from my own experience, I mean, you see a toy under the tree, you get a burst of joy, it's happiness. And so every donation is awesome for us.
And that's all we have for you on the Capitol Report today. I'm your host, Steve Lance. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time.